what we'd like to do is take a couple of moments just to think about how you went and to think about one thing that happened this week that was positive or good or awesome. Just one little thing. It could have been waking up and having a nice cup of coffee. It's just something small that you found or had experienced this week that was really good for you. So take a minute to think about that, and it can be serious or it can be funny or crazy, but just one little thing that happened that you thought made your week that much better. One thing that I had this past week that was a plus in my week was I happened to come across some pleasant pedestrians, and I'll share what that means. Have you ever been in the parking lot of the shopping mall and you stop for someone to cross the road in front of you? And sometimes they cross and they say thank you and they wave at you and are grateful, and other times they just either drag their feet and walk as slow as they can and just ignore you. I hate when that happens. It makes me want to just rev the engine and go vroom and scare them and make them jump off the street, but I don't do that, but it does cross my mind sometimes. But it's awesome when you stop and let someone go by and they just say thank you for doing that, and then they appreciate and they walk past, isn't it? To me that was a plus for my week. Made the day so much better when that occurred during the week. But you probably all have different things that you have experienced that made your week that much more special. I've been in this role now, my new role, for the past 6 months. Believe it or not, time has actually flown by quite quickly. And it's been a great 6 months, a big learning curve for me. And I've been growing and learning quite a bit in the last few months. But I want to just share with you all that I am very thankful for you all for multiple things. Number one, I'm blessed to have a loving congregation. We have a great family here of people who are mature Christians and love each other and all very supportive. I've got a wonderful pastoral team. They help with the governance in the church for us locally. They help with guidance and creativity and oversight and accountability. So it's great to have you all here, and I'm very thankful that you're all a part of the amazing family and the amazing team. We also have a wonderful I might stay here because when I turn my face it gets soft, and when I look this way it gets loud, so I'll kind of stay here. But we also have a lovely and wonderful teaching team and worship leaders who spend so much time and dedication and effort putting together worship for us to all worship together, and also messages every single week that take a lot of hard work and dedication behind the scenes. So thank you all for all the work and effort and dedication that you put into it. It's amazing to have you all here. Today we're talking about the topic of Thanksgiving and what that means to us as Christians and as a church family. And I think it's important to stop and spend some time and reflect about the word Thanksgiving. What comes to mind when you hear the word Thanksgiving? In America it's a big deal. Once a year in November they have what's called a Thanksgiving Day. And it's a time where there's lots of things like food, dinner, family, and there's about 4 different types of food they have on Thanksgiving Day. One is just the right amount, one's a bit too much, one's way too much, and one is just way overboard. So there's really about 4 different food groups they have on Thanksgiving Day, and that's pretty much what they look like. For some, you think about pumpkins and cranberries and different fruits and pies and all kinds of lovely stuff. Others may think about just getting away from it all. There's a little picture here of a turkey pretending to be a small bird, and he's on the little telephone line, wobbling around saying gobble gobble, oops, tweet tweet, and he's trying to get away from Thanksgiving Day because for them it's not really the best day of the year. And the bird is saying, I don't know about this new guy, seems like maybe he's hiding from something. But oftentimes during Thanksgiving, it's a time when people travel to see family and friends, and the airport is so busy, the roads are so busy, and you just want to get away and have some peace and quiet. And sometimes it's a choice for alternative diets. Here the turkey says, eat beef. But what are you thankful for? What comes to your mind when you think of Thanksgiving? As Christians, it's important that we spend lots of time being grateful and thankful. And Thanksgiving is not just a holiday. For us, it should be actually a way of life. I mean, you can have everything the world offers, and you can still have an empty life, or you can have nothing at all and have an overflowing life. And there was a story a couple of weeks back that was on the news. There was a video on YouTube about in India, there was actually a white BMW that ended up in the river, a brown, dirty river flowing really fast, and there was just the BMW in there sinking. And the story behind it goes, there was a young man there who had a birthday. I think he was 18 or something, and he had demanded or requested from his parents a specific kind of car, and the one that he wanted was not what he got. So he took this brand new white BMW, probably 70, 80 grand worth of BMW, and drove it into the river because it wasn't the color or the kind that he wanted. It was too small. So you can actually have everything in the world, physically speaking, and have nothing at all. But when you have a thanksgiving in your heart and gratitude, it provides for us what's called an overflowing lifestyle, where you have a lot more than just if you are not as grateful for what we have. The truth is, you can learn to be grateful for where we've been, individually and as a congregation, and for where we are. And it positions us to be in a better place going forward as well. The more thankful we are for what we have been through in the past, the better our future looks going forward. We'll take a look at one of the stories in the Bible about Thanksgiving. This is actually a bit small for you guys, but Luke chapter 17, verses 11 through 19. Luke 17, 11 through 19 reads, "Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, 'Jesus, Master, have pity on us.' Verse 14, when he saw them, he said, 'Go and show yourselves to the priest.' And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan." Verse 17, Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? And has no one returned to give praise to God except for this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." So it seems from the reading that all 10 were healed, but only one was made well. Today I want to have us talk about 3 points as to why thankfulness matters and why it's important to us as a church family to be thankful for things. Number one is that thankfulness is a response to what the triune God has done for us. It says that as Christ was going through the border, and while he was on his way, 10 men who had leprosy came up to him and asked for his help. It's interesting that Christ is always going towards the borders of life and towards the fringes just to find those who are lost and in need of help more than anyone else. And it's interesting how often he goes to places that we would tend to avoid normally, to heal and to restore those who are sick. And notice how the text mentions that there were 5 men who had leprosy as opposed to saying 5 lepers. Christ sees people who have sin as opposed to people who are sinners. There's a distinction there between the two. The men see Christ and they call out and say, "Jesus, Jesus, have mercy on us." And I love what Christ does, because he didn't say, "I have mercy on you," or "you're healed," or whatever. He just said, "Go and show yourself to the priest." So when they called out for help, he gave them one command and one next step to do. Go to the priest and show yourself to them. And as they went, they were cleansed. In other words, simple obedience in this case brought for them significant breakthrough in their lives. And we can have the exact same outcome in our lives. Verse 15 and 16 says, one of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. So only one, as he took his next step, realized his brokenness was gone, and then thought he'd come back and say thank you. His natural response was to be thankful for what he had received and for the breakthrough that Christ gave him in his life. As we know, leprosy was quite a bad disease back then, very terrible, contagious, incurable in those days, isolating and very numbing. And it gave you pretty much a very slow and painful death over time. And in a sense, that's kind of a spiritual picture of what sin does to us. Sin is also quite contagious, incurable, makes you feel isolated, and over time numbs you and ends up in death as well. So in a sense, we were dead, we were all lost, we're all broken from time to time, and we're all dirty, and now we're alive. We've been found, we've been healed, and we've been cleansed by Christ's sacrifice. Ephesians 2, verses 1 through 5, Ephesians 2, 1 through 5, reads, "As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient." Verse 3, "All of us who lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved." And just like those 10 lepers, we also were on the borders, out on the fringes, and one day when we least expected or least deserved it, Christ came to us and saw us walking over the horizon, reached out his hand to us and cleansed us and made us well. So the only natural response that we can have is to be thankful. Let's take a few minutes just to talk about the question on the screen. What are some of the simple, everyday things that we can be thankful for, but tend to take for granted? So take a few minutes at your tables just to talk about the simple, everyday things we can be thankful for, that we tend to take for granted. And then we'll have a couple of people share that with us when you get done in the next 3 or so minutes. Any volunteers to come forward and have a quick update as to how your table discussion is going? Awesome. Thank you, Gay.
I was just busy taking notes while everybody else commented.
Is that right? Is that better? Bruno is getting up in the morning, going to his back door and taking a nice deep breath and of fresh air, holding it, thinking how great things are and letting it out. Richard, he's thankful and grateful for surviving the last 15 years on his own, without Roz. Bruno, communication with friends, family and God. John, checking that he's actually woken up in the morning. Richard, generally happy, taken for granted. That in most things he's happy and he sometimes takes it for granted. that we don't have to worry about Brexit. And my dear husband says that he's very grateful and sometimes takes it for granted that we have freedom of thought. That's it.
Awesome. Awesome, thank you. Anybody else want to share with us? No? Okay, all good. Oh, John, sorry.
I know I'm from the same table, but Billy Graham one time said the greatest sin in the United States, and I think we could agree that it's the same here, is the sin of ingratitude. And one other thing, just with Peter read the NIV, which I have, but I think the King James says that the man who came and gave thanks was made whole, which is probably a better, if you think about what happens when you get leprosy. There's all sorts of jokes about putting your foot on the accelerator and stuff like that, but those others were cleansed, but this guy was made whole. So if fingers had dropped off and whatnot, they were all replaced. The word well doesn't really, to us, mean that.
Awesome, thank you for that. Good insight. So the main idea is just to take time as we go through the weeks and think about the little things that we can be grateful for, and just say thank you to God for the smallest little thing. The bird that tweets out the window as opposed to taking a stick and get away from here. Be thankful. There's places where there's just none of that in this world. The second thing that gratitude does, or being thankful does, is it builds our faith. So when we thank God for things, what we're doing is we're actually connecting God to the good things in our lives. So connect Him to the good things in our minds, the good things in our hearts, and the good things in our spirit. We connect God to things like our protection and our safety, connect Him to things like our provision, whether it's money or food and all that kind of stuff, connect Him to our healing and our health, and for saving us from our sins and trespasses. When we stop to acknowledge what God has done, it helps us to grow and build our faith. Hebrews 11 verse 1 reads, Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Confidence in what we hope for and assurance in what we do not see. When we start giving thanks to God for what we have seen, our faith for what we have not yet seen begins to grow. When we start giving thanks to God for what we've seen, our belief in what we have not yet seen begins to be strengthened and grows. When we give thanks to God for what He's done in our lives, our faith in what He has not yet done is strengthened as well. And when we acknowledge that God has moved in our world, in our lives, in our church, in our hearts, we begin to have faith that God will move for us in the future when we have other challenges down the road. So when this one guy came back to show gratitude and thankfulness, he was actually connecting Christ and God to the good thing that happened in his life, and we can do the same. God's faithfulness yesterday gives us the faith we need for today and for tomorrow. The next topic to talk about, discussion topic, is just to share at the table some thoughts on how gratitude or thankfulness builds our faith. So take some time, about 5 minutes, to talk about how thankfulness and gratitude builds our faith in our Christian walk. And I'll be back in a few moments. Okay, we'll have some people share with us about what you discussed at your tables. Anyone want to come up and share what you discussed on your tables regarding how gratitude builds our faith? Richard.
Thank you, Pastor Peter.
You're welcome.
So how on the earth does gratitude and thankfulness increase our faith? Very simple. Because when we express gratitude to our Father in heaven, we increase and improve our relationship with him. Right? That's what it's all about. We're meant to have a relationship. Now take it on a human level. We have our father and mother. When we're thankful to them, we become closer to them. And it's the same with our Father in heaven. And as we build our relationship, then our faith increases. Because where does faith come from? It doesn't come from our belief and building up a belief, just like turning on a light switch. It's the faith of Jesus Christ in us. And if the more we become aware and the deeper the relationship, the better it's going to be. And that comes from gratitude.
Thank you, Richard. Very good. Any other comments on this question from any tables? Brian, please.
Yeah, we had a good discussion at our table. One of the younger members of the table brought up a really good point. She said if you're not grateful in your everyday life, which is hard to do because you're just doing your normal stuff. So how did your faith build in that? Well, when you pray, that's you're connecting with God. I think Richard hit on that. In your heart, you're actually connecting with God and your faith's growing because you know he's listening to you and he's also telling you something. Another point that was made was that if you're not grateful and growing in your faith in normal everyday circumstances, how are you going to be grateful and grow through trials? You must be grateful in both, because trials do build your faith. Anyone who's been through a hard trial knows that God's with them through it, and it does build your faith. So we think being grateful for trials is another good point. So that's about it for us.
Awesome. Thank you. Very good stuff. Lovely. And since time is moving forward, we'll go to point number 3. Point number 3 is that gratitude, or being thankful keeps us humble. Being thankful keeps us humble. There are often times when people think about their accomplishments and tend to take all the praise for, look at what I've done. I've done so well in my school, my career. I've got all this money. I've got this big house, all these cars. And it's all me that did it all. I worked so hard, and I'm such a great, smart person. Oftentimes we take credit for what God has done in our lives. And lack of gratitude, or lack of being thankful, ends up making us feel independent from God, as opposed to being God dependent, depending on him for our sustenance. We have nothing without the grace of God. James 1 verse 17 reads, "Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows." Every good and perfect gift is from above. One thing to realize is that true gratitude or true thankfulness is always expressive. It's one thing to, in your head, think, oh, I'm so grateful for this. But when you actually stop and say it out loud, express it to someone, write it down in a note or something, it's a whole different ballgame when you actually express that gratitude, as opposed to just thinking, I'm so thankful, I'm so grateful. Gratitude is, in a sense, humility being expressed, saying, thank you for doing XYZ, because I couldn't have done it on my own. And gratitude, as we all know, is another form of worship, saying thank you for being amazing, thank you for the gifts, and thank you for the love that you've shared with us. What I'd like to do is just take a few moments. On your tables, there's a white envelope there in the middle. Take a couple of seconds to open that up, if you don't mind. Now you may open the little envelopes. And in there you have a few thank you cards. They are our new GCI thank you cards. And we're going to take a few moments to actually practice being thankful this morning as we round up our time together. So let's all take, there should be one card each for each person on the table and a few pens. If you don't have your pen, there's some in the envelopes. And we'll take about 5 minutes to have everyone think about someone in your life, in your world, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whether it's a neighbor who maybe helped you cut a tree down or something, and just write for 5 minutes a thank you card to anyone that you choose that you can hand over to them later on during the week. 5 minutes, a little thank you card that you can pass on to somebody who has done something for you, small or big, in your world. And we'll get to actually practice thanksgiving and gratitude today. To someone that you're thankful for. Sometimes it's quite hard to actually think about one person that you're thankful for, and then to actually turn that thought into something you write down on paper. That's actually the hard bit for many of us sometimes. So if you have not finished your note, if you're writing a dissertation maybe, you can continue that later on if you wanted to. That's totally fine. But the idea is just to practice thankfulness starting from today as we go forward, and to share that and let someone know that you're thankful for what they've done for you. What you'll find is we have obviously the connection cards right here on the table beside the basket, and there's also a few extra thank you cards on the table. So feel free to take some if you'd like to. If you can make a donation, that would be great, because it helps offset the cost. And we'd love to have us all practice being thankful moving forward as we continue to do that, and to share with others about who we are, what we do, and the love that God has given to us. So again, the one request I have is if you're going to take a connection card, please only take it if you're going to use it, because they do cost money to produce these, and would love to have you share this with somebody in your life who needs the love of God shared with them. Not preaching, just some love. The other thing I'd say about these is they do have information on the back regarding how they can communicate with us. It has my phone number on there, our website, and other details. So please do take these and share them with those that you'd like to as you move forward. We're open to other ideas and thoughts. If you have any thoughts about how we can spread the word about our lovely church family here, that'll be good. These might be very helpful for inviting someone to join us for another cafe church, or any other function that we have, and just write your name on the back and say, here, give us a call sometime or pop in and visit. We'd love to have you join us. But usually people are happy to come around for food and fellowship, and that's what this cafe church environment does provide for people. So again, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be part of this. I appreciate you all very much. Did you have a comment, Ian? We'll have one more comment.
Took this being thankful to extreme the other week. I was driving the bus at the lights. I was stopped at the lights, and I reached down to my phone, my mobile phone, and I picked it up, and next to me were the police, were next to me. Anyway, he pulls me over down the road, okay, and he gives me a $400 ticket. And he comes and he's standing there, and we exchange blah, blah, blah. No, well, I didn't, Anyway, when he gave me the ticket, I said, thank you. And when I was driving down the road, I thought, what, are you crazy? He said to the man, thank you for giving you a $400 ticket. So that was my, it must be ingrained.
Good job, Ian. Good job. Next time you can have a card to give the cop a card, a thank you card when he does that next time, which hopefully won't happen again. But we'll give you a thank you card for the next time you need one in the bus. But it's great to be here. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you got something little out of today's celebration, and I'll pass back over to Tash for the remainder of our service. Thank you very much.
Donation.
donations in the basket to help cover the cost of our lovely cards. That'll be great. They cost about $1 each to produce them, which is not bad for a card these days. Normally cards are $4 or $5, so these are $1 each to cover the cost. Pardon me. Back to Tash, thank you.